Now it's time for Spot on Sports. Here's your hosts, Mike Trezor and Mike Guidone.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Spot on Sports, New York's premier sports talk show. We talk sports, all New York sports, and nothing but sports. My name is Mike Trezor. Mike Guidone a little bit later on to help us out. But in the meantime, we've got a great show for you tonight. We've got two special guests on the Zoom with me, Ray Negron, special assistant to the New York Yankees, and the gentleman who's making a documentary film about him, my colleague at Suffolk Community College and my friend, Professor William O'Connell. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
How are you, Mike? Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much for being here. So, Ray, let's start with you. I think a lot of people have heard this story by this point in time, but can you tell the story just one more time of your initial interaction with the Yankees and how you came to get involved with them?
That's Mike. That started in 1973. I was outside Yankee Stadium doing what we all used to do, is just hang out, play all sorts of sports, and goof on each other and do a little graffiti. And one day, in the process, a car drives onto the sidewalk. Two guys jump out, and everybody starts to run. I trip, and I'm the one that's caught. And this was right outside Yankee Stadium. And next thing you know, I was being put into a holding cell. And within minutes, the guys that put me in that holding cell came back and told the police officer, "Give me the kid." And so they take me out. They dragged me back to the Yankee locker room. I didn't know where I was going. I was like, I couldn't believe what was happening or where And next thing you know, they're giving me a uniform, and the guy says, he's got damages he's going to work off. And that night, I was the bat boy for the New York Yankees, and the guy that caught me was George Steinbrenner.
That's crazy. That's amazing. And, it's funny, Ray, I heard you tell this part of the story before. When that first entrance into the locker room happened, a lot of the players didn't seem to know exactly what was going on or quite what to make of you.
Well, nor should they, because the Steinbrenner had just brought the team, so he wasn't well known to them. They didn't know his aura or anything like that. They didn't know the kind of person that he was. And then to see me, a neighborhood kid, and it was like, why is he here? They just caught him doing vandalizing the stadium. Why should we trust him? So it was all of these variables that were going on.
Yeah. So at that point in time, the players were unsure exactly what to make of you. But as time went on, you returned again and again and ended up their bat boy for the rest of the season. And slowly but surely, guys like Thurman Munson, Reggie Jackson, and even Billy Martin, who was the manager, started to take you under their wing. Can you tell us a little bit about how that process progressed?
You know what? Billy saw a lot of himself in me. We both came from the same type of backgrounds. Our fathers had basically abandoned us. And so that was easy. And Thurman, believe it or not, was in the same type of situation with his father. And with Reggie, it was the aspect he just became a big brother automatically, because a lot of the guys on the team didn't like him. But to me, Reggie was bigger than life, and he saw how I looked up to him. So again, that just was an easy thing. Plus, Reggie spoke Spanish, so he would speak to me in Spanish all the time,
And, what's funny is that 73, I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, Ray, was the last year that they were at the old stadium before they played at Shea for a couple seasons. Now,
no, that's correct.
Did you make the transition with them from Yankee Stadium to Shea, and were you with them during that 74-75 season?
Oh, that was the best. That was, for me, the 74 season was my favorite season, because we weren't supposed to win and that year, Paul McCartney had a song called Band on the Run.
Yes.
And so in essence, because we were playing at Shea Stadium, they called us the Band on the Run. And every time a guy hit a home run, they would play that. And years later, I would actually get to talk to McCartney about that and how that song was so big to that team.
And what I was curious about, Ray, and hearing some of these stories from you over the years was, how did you get to be, or how did you come to be with the Yankees as the bat boy in the dugout for such an extended period? In other words, I heard the story about Reggie's curtain call in '77, and I'm saying to myself, well, by this time, this kid's got to be 16, 17 years old. So how did that part of the story shake out?
No, it's just that, you know what, when you're there, and you wear lots of hats, so I was essentially the clubhouse kid, and today I'm going to bat boy, tomorrow I'm going to ball boy. You was all over the sphere of the clubhouse. Whatever was needed, you did. I used to do videotapes. I used to videotape the players so that they could see how they were heading and stuff like that. Or, we were the first to do that. I used to take care of the gymnasium that we had. We were the first to do that. That was George Steinbrenner. He was way ahead of his time in the things that he wanted. And every time he wanted to do something, I automatically would be the guinea pig to go and work on this or do that or do this, and because it was easier that way. And I couldn't please the boss. I wanted to please him in any way that I could. I wanted to, hey, and some may call it kissing ass. I call it the aspect of loving the Yankees.
But it's funny. After I heard you tell the story on another platform, I actually pulled up that video clip of Reggie being pushed out of the dugout after that third World Series home run in '77. And I'm like, wow, there he is. There's Ray pushing him out of the dugout, just like he said.
Mm-hmm. No, it's that's one of my big thrills, was that moment, because he listened to me. Who am I, some Puerto Rican kid from the South Bronx, and I'm telling the biggest star in baseball to take a curtain call? Come on. When does that happen? That just told me, wow, I guess there's a God and he put me here.
And I want to ask you, Bill, when did your friendship with Ray start? How did it come about? And how did you decide, who decided and when, the idea for the documentary that you're working on?
I met Ray through a mutual friend about 12 or 14 years ago, somewhere around there. And I was doing a lot of film work myself. And I thought, when I heard his story, that it was just fascinating to me, just like it was to everybody else. And I had asked him years ago, I had asked him, Ray, I just finished doing a documentary on the homeless. I would love to do your documentary. And he showed no interest at all. He said, no, I'm just, right now in my life, I just don't really want, I'm not down for it. And I probably begged him for a good 10 years to tell his story, because I felt like this is a story that must be told, because people focus on the spray painting, but this guy is in the Latino or International Latino Baseball Hall of Fame, right? His book is on display, The Boy of Steel in the Baseball Hall of Fame. He's just made such a significant impact on our world. And I feel like people like Ray, their story has to be told. This is a guy who spoke at the UN twice. I mean, I have no friends that spoke at the UN. We're in academics, Mike. Do we know anybody who spoke at the UN?
I don't know anybody. But in the meantime, can you talk a little bit, Bill, about what the process of making this documentary was like for you, who it was you got to interact with and all that stuff?
Yes, I can. Well, it was it's been very emotional. I mean, Ray was very close to Thurman Munson, obviously very close to Reggie and all the players. And then, he had the one thing nobody talks about is his losses. He's a 19-year-old kid, a 20-year-old kid, loses Thurman Munson in his life, who's like a big brother to him. Years later, he loses Billy Martin, and then ultimately loses the boss. And I think that has a major impact on a person. But he doesn't talk a lot about that. So the process itself, I've interviewed, there's a whole long list of people. I interviewed a lady by the name of Stevie Phillips, who was Judy Garland's agent. Earl Toulon, who was the Suffolk County Sheriff. We have Mickey Rivers. We have Richard Gere. Soon, Chaz Palminteri will be interviewed. And another person, Louis Guzman. Louis Guzman. There's a whole long list of stars that we've interviewed for this. And they all have such interesting things to say.
Can you tell me where you are with the documentary right now in terms of percent complete? And when can we, members of the public, get a look at this?
Well, I finished, I'm about, I would say, almost 80% complete. We still have 4 or 5 player interviews that we have to finish, and we still have to finish the Thurman Munson piece, which has been, I think we've been putting it off because it's probably going to be very difficult, an emotional time for Ray. And I'm waiting to get up to the airport, Teterboro Airport. I think we're going to wait till the weather gets just a little bit warmer. And I'd like to catch him in a situation where, we could be in a natural setting and I could just interview him and talk to him about it. We've talked off camera about it. So I would say we're probably a good 80% complete. And I've been working on this now for almost a year. May will be a year.
Wow. And, it's funny, Ray, when you're a 12, 13-year-old kid, you're looking up to these ball players that are in their 20s and 30s. And then later on, those guys that are players on the team are more your contemporaries. And then much later on, those guys are actually guys that are younger than yourself. So can you talk a little bit about your relationships over the years with that original group of players, Reggie, Thurman, Willie Randolph, etc., and then the group from the 90s, including Doc and Darryl and those guys, and then also your relationship now with the current group of players?
Well, the group of the 70s was a family. Because I can honestly say I had 25 brothers, and because it wasn't just, it's easy to say Thurman and Reggie, what I'm saying, but there's also Mickey Rivers, there's Bucky Dent, there's Greg Nettles, there's Chris Chambliss, there's Roy White. I mean, the list goes on and on. Catfish Hunter, Ron Guidry, Sparky Lyle, and those guys were cool. Goose Gossage. They were just cool. They were great. They looked out for me. I looked out for them. They knew that I would take a bullet for them. I can't say that I would take a bullet for anybody today because it's a whole different breed, and to me, the most powerful word in the world is love. You know what I'm saying? And I can overemphasize the fact that in the 70s, there was just a love thing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I loved them. They loved me. It was real. One day we were on the bus, the team bus, and I wasn't sitting in the normal spot that I would always sit. I was sitting in the back because I was overtired because I had worked really hard that day. It was after a spring training game. So we're down the highway, and all of a sudden, Catfish Hunter gets up, and he starts to scream, "Stop the bus! Stop the effing bus!" And we swerve off the damn highway, and everybody screams, "What the hell's going on? What's happened? This and that!" And Catfish screams out, "We forgot Ray Negron. We left Ray Negron." and I screamed out, "Catfish, I'm back here." And so Catfish says, "Okay, we can go." And Cliff Johnson says, "You stopped the bus for that, mother effer?" You know what I'm saying? So it just showed you, I mean, who was I that the world champions would stop the bus for the clubby, for the bat boy? You know what I'm saying? And let me tell you something. I couldn't swallow for a half hour from trying to stop crying because that was the moment. That really was the moment that I felt that I really belonged.
Wow, that's great. What I find fascinating, though, Ray, is your relationship with the Yankees that started almost 50 years ago. You've sort of parlayed that into books, into commercials, into movies, into really, essentially, a 50-year career for yourself. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Look, I've just been blessed, and George Steinbrenner was the one that basically said to me that, you are somebody, you're special, do something, whatever you want to do, go for it, and when Reggie was there, he was the biggest star in sports at the time, and he ended up putting me in his commercials, and that would lead to movies. And it's been a wonderful scenario because I've gotten to work not only with some of the great stars in sports and baseball, but some of the great stars in the film business, like Richard Gere, Gregory Hines, the great Francis Ford Coppola, today's Chaz Palminteri. I've gotten to meet and befriend Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. And the list goes on. And, I love being able to say, I never went to a Frank Sinatra or a Sammy Davis concert. I never saw them in concert except for television. However, how many people can say that they would have dinner with them? How many people could say that they could hang out in their hotel room? Spring training, I got Dave Winfield coming to my locker and say, come on, we got to go. I want you to introduce me to Sammy. You know what I'm saying? And that I found to be like so cool. Look, Dave Winfield, Hall of Famer, he's asking me to hook him up, So, I thought that was so cool.
So now with the lockout just being solved in the last day or so, Ray, we're ready to get started with baseball this year. Talk about what your involvement with the Yankees now is, and also about your work as sort of a community liaison for the Yankees.
I'm going through a lot of mixed emotions. I've been extremely tearful. My heart is broken because what's happening in the Ukraine and all the children that are, dying or hurt, or all those cancer kids that had to be pulled out those hospitals because of the explosions and all that. I haven't thought about baseball, and baseball now is the aspect of that's how I pay my bills, But I can't think about it. I don't care per se, because I'm more concerned about those children over there. I'm more concerned about, like, I was late today, believe it or not, because I was on a call because I would really love, my youngest son just moved out, and I have his bedroom there. And every time I look at that bedroom, every day I say to myself, why can't I adopt one or two of those Ukrainian kids and have them live right there and let me be their dad? You know what I'm saying?
That would be great.
These are the things that are in my mind right now that are more important than baseball.
Yeah. But with the season scheduled to start, I'm sure once it does, you'll be excited. How about a little bit about your work on behalf of the Yankees, reaching out to various members of the community in the Bronx, down in Tampa, and other places?
Well, more so in the Bronx. And I just want for kids, because baseball belongs to the kids, not to these, anyway, I'm not going to use words, but baseball belongs to the children. Babe Ruth always said that. Babe Ruth always said baseball is the greatest game in the world, and it's the children's game. It's the kids' game. And we don't teach that enough. And so in essence, I like being in the community and to show them that, hey, if I could make it, you can make it. I'm not rich, I'm not famous or anything like that. However, I gave it everything I've had up to this point, and I'm still growing up, and I try to tell the kids that. And at the same time, I want to introduce them or reintroduce them to baseball and how beautiful this game is and how wonderful and that we can play and get out there and have fun with it and feel the air. Forget about drugs and alcohol and all that kind of stuff for now, and let's enjoy the game, because that's baseball has kept me alive. If it wasn't for baseball, I wouldn't be alive today. So thank you, God, for inventing baseball, because I give the credit to him.
One more for you, Bill, on the documentary. You have a time frame in mind where you think the documentary will be 100% completed, and when do you think members of the public will be able to see it?
Well, Ray's going to celebrate his 50th year in Major League Baseball sometime early next year. And I think it's going to be sometime early next year, but I think I can be finished with it before July. That's my tentative date. So, I mean, we don't have an official trailer out yet, but we do have some things that people can see. If you want a copy of that, I can give you a copy of that for your production. And I wanted to go back to something too. Ray's being humble when he talks about his community service work, but I know he does a lot of work in the Bronx at the at the inner city schools. And I know he's done a lot of work with Gio Urshela and Gleyber Torres. They seem to be two players who really love to engage the public. And to go back to the documentary for a second, we have some amazing stories. We have the story about Ray pushing Reggie out the dugout, but we have Reggie's side of it too. And
that's great.
We have a great story about Bucky Dent, about Mickey Rivers, and about Ron Guidry, one of my favorite stories, actually, which was very funny. And when Ray mentioned Frank Sinatra, I have this, I'll call it a timepiece that we did on racism. That's part of our documentary. And it's an eye opener. And we have a story with Dwight Gooden, which is a very powerful story. You'll see Dwight Gooden like you've never seen him before.
I can't wait, guys. I'm really looking forward to seeing it. It's been my pleasure to have both of you this afternoon. Good luck with the documentary. I can't wait to see it. I'm a guy your age, Ray. I've been a Yankee fan since I'm 7 years old, so I'm familiar with a lot of these stories, but I'm also anxious to learn a lot from your story and from the story you, Bill, are putting together. So I want to thank you, gentlemen, for coming on with me. And, I'm excited about the documentary.
Mike, thank you so much. I want to just say one thing before we say goodbye to you. We have a great Derek Jeter story that nobody knows. It's a one-time great story that I have. And I also have a little bit on A-Rod also, a nice little interview with A-Rod.
That's great.
Some of his community service. So there's a lot of stars in this documentary. It's not all about baseball, as you can see just by what Ray is talking about. It's the essence of the heart, the soul, and who he is as a person. And thank you, Mike, for being such a great host.
And Mike, and if everything goes according to plan, we hope to have this in 1 or 2 festivals this coming fall, winter, before it premieres next year. So we'll see.
All right. So as we get a little bit closer, I'd like to have one or both of you guys back on and give our audience much more info on the documentary. But in the meantime, I thank both of you again for being my guests. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more right after this on Spot on Sports.
Okay, Mike, take care.
This is Tyler Davis, tight end for the Green Bay Packers, and you're listening to Spot on Sports.
Now back to Spot on Sports with Mike Trezor and Mike Guidone.
Welcome back, everyone, to Spot on Sports. Mike Trezor, the great Michael Anthony, driving the train for us tonight. And now I am joined by the guy we used to call the coach, but from now on, we will call the coach, Mike Guidone.
Trez, it's great to be with you. And I just got to tell you, what a fantastic job on that interview with Ray. When you can talk to somebody who obviously, has told these stories many, many times, and you could see you literally like brought him to tears on a couple of things. I can't wait to watch that documentary, even as a Met fan. Oop, that one. And really just fascinating stuff. Well done.
Thank you, Mike. And it's great to have you here. Oh, our buddy Joe Salamino's commenting us. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. But you know what, folks? We have to take a hard right now and get away from baseball, get away from pro sports, and talk a little Brooklyn Nets basket. No, I'm just kidding, Mike. We
Although-
are going to talk some. Go ahead, Mike.
There was some breaking news, Mike, just as that interview was going on. I don't know if you heard that the mayor is changing the law to allow players and performers in New York, and it's going to be announced tomorrow. So your man Kyrie will now be a full-time Brooklyn Net.
Wow, that is great news. All right, so we're going to spend the next 38 minutes talking Nets basketball, folks. No, we're not. We're going to talk some high school hoops right now. I don't know how many in our listening audience know this. My partner, Mike Guidone, is the head basketball coach of girls varsity up at Locust Valley High School in Northeast Nassau. And his team, folks, just finished a 54-game winning streak and now hold the all-time girls basketball record on Long Island. So congratulations, Mike.
Thanks, Mike, very much. It was very exciting and something I never thought could happen.
Yeah, so, once you get to the state tournament and you're in the quarterfinals, what is your mindset, Mike, going into these games against teams you've never seen before? You don't know how good they are, how they stack up against yours. So let's start there and work our way backwards.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. When we first started, the journey in the playoffs, the Nassau playoffs were against teams, obviously, that we had played throughout the year. So preparation was important, but not nearly as much as we needed to do, going forward. When we got to the Long Island round, playing Greenport Southold, we literally were able to watch them in person, myself and my staff, 3 times, which was a huge advantage. The Suffolk County playoffs started a little earlier than the Nassau playoffs. So being able to go out and see them and even have some film on them was really a huge, huge advantage. So when the game started and we got to play them, myself and definitely the staff, we felt really comfortable about the game plan and really that we knew these players, almost as well as teams that we had played earlier on in the season. When we got to the quarterfinals to play Putnam Valley, it was a little different situation. We only had 1 day to prepare. But listen, at that point in the season, that's what happens. We would have had 2 days, but their game was snowed out because we had that freakish snowstorm in the middle of the week a couple weeks ago, and upstate, they really got pounded. So my assistant was able to go up and watch the game and watch them play. And, we were going to play the winner, and the game kind of came down to the end. So it was not an easy game to scout. Whenever you're scouting 2 teams and you got to pick the one at the end, and if it's a close game, can never be easy. But my assistant, Joe Moser, did a fantastic job. And unfortunately, we weren't able to get a lot of tape on them. So it was quite honestly the most difficult game for us in quite some time going into. I felt prepared, but not as prepared as I would have liked. But that's what happens at this time of year. You're playing teams you've never seen, or maybe once or twice you get somebody to go take a look. We had been following them throughout the year, hoping that we would get to that point, but it was tough.
Yeah. So, I wanted to ask you, Mike, as you were getting near what had been the record prior to you guys breaking it of 52 in a row. I mean, were there times that going into a game, you felt a little bit nervous that you guys might get picked off at 50 or 51, which would have been like, oh.
Absolutely. Mike, I'll tell you, as you go through the season, and this as a sports fan and a athlete and whatever else, you're playing teams, a second and even a third time, and I'll give you that example in just a minute. And I have to be honest, we were pretty successful with the majority of the teams that we played this year, especially in our league. We really did a good job. But as we got towards the end, absolutely, yeah, even the games that you had beaten the team, comfortably before. That's why you play them. So it was a little tense going into the championship round of Nassau County. We knew that if we swept through, that we would tie the record for the Nassau championship, and we were lucky enough to do that and had a comfortable game. But then in between, we had to play to get the record. We had to play what was basically kind of an exhibition game Nassau County does the B class champion and the C class champion, and they play off against each other. Doesn't matter if you win or not. It's just kind of for bragging rights, but the game counts in your standings. So here we are, and we're playing Carl Place, who had really played us tough in the league more than anyone else. And I was going to myself, could you believe if we're going to not be able to get this record in a game that kind of doesn't count, and thankfully we got off to an amazing lead and whatever. But I won't lie to you, I was tight that game. I really was, because to me, if we had come all that way and not finished the job, at least on that game, it would have been a real downer going into the Long Island Championship. So thankfully we got that. And then, it took a little of the pressure off, but it really was more on, I think, myself and the coaching staff. The players were great. We didn't even talk about this until we hit 50, which was the end of our regular season. And when I told the team at the end, 3/4 of them were surprised that it was even at that. They had no idea, and because we never talked about it. So Newsday kind of got involved in it a little bit as we went further and got some great coverage. Shout out to Owen O'Brien from Newsday, who just was tremendous for us. So as it started to go on, it definitely got a little bit more intense.
Yeah, so we've got something a little bit different, Mike. We've got somebody who doesn't usually pop on with us that wanted to pop on for just a minute. Go ahead, please.
Mike, there he is.
I know we just talked, but I wanted to formally congratulate you, Mike.
Oh, thank you, Mike.
I know a lot of famous people. Now you're added to that list. And I just wanted to say a big congrats to you, Mike.
I truly appreciate that. Thank you very much.
No problem. And I also want to let Mike know, and you also, that we have a few other people that want to say hello. So Mike, just let me know when you want me to bring them in, and they'll be on. Congratulations, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate that. Thank
you, Michael. Well, why don't we bring on that first person who's supposed to join us, Michael Anthony? Go ahead and do that. There he is.
My man.
How's everybody doing?
How are you doing, Chris?
Doing great.
Good to see you there with the 7 line behind you, and I'm sure you're excited. And we just a little quick background. Maybe I haven't mentioned this before, but those of you that you see Chris now. Chris was actually a player of mine when he was in high school. I know it's hard to believe because we look exactly the same age, but he was a fantastic player, one of the best we ever had at Holy Child, where he went to school. And then I was lucky enough to have him on my staff a couple of times at Malloy College, and then at New York Tech for 3 years while I was there. Great basketball mind, but a better guy and a better friend.
We might actually have a memory to share.
Right. Uh-oh. Look at that. That's proof right there. We have
kids. I mean, the players are kids, but so are the coaches.
Oh my God. Look at the color of our hair, Chris. That's crazy.
That's Yep. Mike's in the top left corner with Brian Nell, and I'm in the top right corner with Chris Vankovics. And that was for me my first kind of big experience as a coach, and Mike brought me in as a volunteer. I wound up coaching high school after that, and eventually going back to college with Mike. But I'll just say this, Mike and Coach, I've learned a lot from Mike as far as coaching. I wouldn't say necessarily it's all X's and O's, though. It's more of the strategy. It's the how to deal with players. And, it's different coaching women and men, and Mike's done both. And you have to treat it differently. Every season is different. You can't go in and say every year I'm going to run the same offense. So I've kind of learned a lot of how to change things up and, learn on the fly and making sure that you get the most out of your players by changing and adapting.
Well, thanks.
I wanted to ask you, Coach Mike, that before Chris came on, I didn't want to cut into his time, but since he brought up what I thought is a really interesting point, I'm really curious to know what the percentage you would put on it in terms of the time you actually spend with your players, especially ones who have been with you for several seasons. How much of it is X's and O's strategy, and how much of it is motivation?
When I was younger, that's a great question. When I was younger, I thought it would really be about, 75% X's and O's and 25% other. It really, as time goes on, it's really flipped. And the X's and O's are, of course, are part of the game, but motivation, just getting to know them. There's a famous quote, and I hope I get it right. players don't care how much you know; they want to know how much you care, and that's really, really true now, and especially in coaching young ladies and college age young women as opposed to young men and boys. They're very similar in a lot of ways, but you'll make a general statement to the team, and each player, I think, on the girls' end is like, is he talking about me? On the boys' end, they're like, all right, hey, oh, he's talking about this guy, and they roll a little differently with it. So I learned that kind of the hard way in some ways, but that's a lot of what Chris was talking about.
Would you say that girls have a little bit less ego, girls and women, as compared to guys? A little bit more willing to buy into the whole team chemistry kind of thing?
I think that's a fair assessment, but I will say this, and I think, Cap, if you want to jump in here, this as well. The advent of not really CYO, but travel basketball, club teams and all that. It used to be just the guys. Now the AAU circuit for the girls is pretty important. And while that's true, the young ladies are getting noticed, when they're younger, and really, they're told at a young age how wonderful they are, and that's nice. But the girls are a little bit easier to buy in, I think, but it's kind of leveling out.
And making that run at 54 in a row at a public school is tough, because a lot of these girls hear from some of the private schools that, hey, it's time to go. Why don't you come here? You're going to be seen more. They're going to go. But I think Mike kind of lets them know that they're going to be seen at the high school. They're going to be seen on their AAU circuit. And I think a lot of girls do like to stay together because there's multiple sports that they like to play. But I think you're right. There is that aspect of, do they have that ego? But, I think Mike always made sure that there was time for bonding. I know we would spend, day 10 of the off season doing stuff where girls had to, half the girls would work on one thing and the other half would come in. And there's all that team bonding that has to go on, because if you want to win in March, you got to get them to like each other in November and December.
Comment us, folks. We want your comments tonight. If you want to send Coach Mike a nice little congratulatory message, that would be great. But what I want to
Thank you, Joe.
What I want to ask you about, Mike, is at a school like Locust Valley, which at first glance, I mean, from the outside, people would think of as, kind of an upper middle class area.
Sure.
Not necessarily on the surface what you would necessarily think of as being a powerhouse in the sport of basketball specifically. But what do you think there is about that town that has made it, has produced so many good players and allowed you to have this kind of success?
Well, the continuity and kind of doubling back to what Chris had mentioned about losing kids to private schools, we've been pretty lucky with that. There's two wonderful private schools, Friends Academy and Portledge, that are right down the block from us. And thankfully, I've been lucky. The boys' team hasn't been as lucky, but pretty much everybody has stayed with us. Even St. Dominic's is in Oyster Bay, the next town over. So I think I've gotten lucky with that. But you have to talk to really the youth programs. We have a great CYO program run out of St. Gertrude's in Bayville, which is Bayville and Locust Valley are together as kind of sister towns under the Locust Valley banner. And also we have a girls and boys club in Locust Valley, which runs youth programs from 6 and 7 year olds and up. So when you have that and that kind of interest, it really makes my job pretty easy. One of the things we stress when we first came in as a staff to Locust Valley was doing some clinics for the younger kids, watching the middle school teams and just being a presence so that everyone around there knew that whether they were young or old, they were cared about. And the other thing, that we've stressed, and I was so flattered throughout this playoff run, and even I got so many texts and calls and emails from former players, and we really try to talk about the fact that the team is a family, and that whether you played 15 years ago or whether you're playing today, you're always part of the family. So it was great to see that, and I even got a text right in the locker room from a girl I went to high school with, because I'm a Locust Valley grad, who played basketball, and she said, you need to tell these girls how proud everybody is and whatever else, and that really got them fired up. So that family atmosphere, it can kind of be thrown around sometimes, but I think that's been a huge part of it. And really just having great players come out of the youth programs. When you have that as well, and that continuity, it makes my job, really, really easy.
While we have you, Chris, any big stories coming out of Port St. Lucie this spring?
Well, I think, you're saying the number one thing is if we can make sure that all the players can play when they're in Flushing, that's number one, because who knows who's on that list. And hopefully we don't have to worry about that.
Chris, did you hear though? I just was looking on Twitter. Apparently it's going to be announced tomorrow that athletes and theater performers are going to now be exempt from that. So apparently Kyrie and everybody else on the Yankees and Mets is going to be able to play now. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I think that might be breaking news we have here. Hopefully.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that's true. And, this way everybody can play. But I think, for the most part, the expectations for the Mets are pretty high this year. And I worry about that stuff because, people are like, oh, Sterling Marte, he's not even playing yet. And he stood in the box, but he's not going to take. I mean, here's the next, guy that comes to the Mets, but that never plays, So I get worried about that stuff. But the four guys that I would say I'm looking for a bounce back year are Lindor. I mean, he's 10 years, $341 million, was playing hurt last year, had the oblique strain. Like to see him get out there and do stuff. Carlos Carrasco missed a lot of the last year, had a 6 ERA, couldn't get out of the first inning without giving up 5 runs. Maybe he becomes a fourth starter instead of a second or a third. Jeff McNeil, are you going to get the 319 from his first few years, or are you going to get the 259 and 7 homers that he got last year? I like the Eric Chavez, however you say him. That's the lefty guy that maybe can show him how to hit the ball the right way. And the fourth guy is Dom Smith. I mean, guy hits 2 homers off of Scherzer the other day. It comes out that last year he was playing with a partially torn labrum. He's back at full strength. If you can get numbers out of those guys, it's not all stress on guys like Alonso. It's not all stress on, Cano to come out and overperform. Nimmo's, I think, going to have a great year, probably going to play center field most of the year, which I think is good. But here's the thing that I think is going to come up with a lot of teams. There's going to be injuries early on from these guys not getting enough spring training. Maybe more pitchers, but there's going to be hamstrings. There's going to be, guys just blowing something, twisting something. And you got to have backups. And that's why they go out and get guys like Travis Jankowski and just have these backup guys. So I'm really worried about injuries with the Mets this year because their staff is a little bit older. They did go out and, get some guys. They really don't have a lefty in the bullpen besides this guy, Chasen Shreve, they brought back. So I don't mind if they
You remember him, Mike Trezor, right?
Yeah, I hated him when he was here, honestly.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that the Mets maybe use somebody like a J.D. Davis to go out and get themselves a veteran lefty.
I think one of the things that Major League Baseball did, which is a real smart thing, is they're going to expand the rosters through May 1st. So you'll be able to carry a few more players. It's smart on their end. And, when you have a veteran manager like a Buck Showalter, who I think we're all thrilled, or at least Chris and I are thrilled, Mike Trezor, that he's guiding the Mets right now. That makes us feel pretty good. But I'd agree with you. Yeah, when you're talking about age and different things, Chris, it's a Met worry. But it's great to be talking at this point about a team that has just a great upside.
Yep, you got the 9-inning doubleheaders are back. You still got the ghost runner on second base in extra innings to kind of speed it up a little bit. But I think the biggest thing you're going to see this year in the National League is the DH. Yeah. I mean, they did put in the Ohtani rule so that the DH can stay in the game after he comes out. But watching the Mets with 9 batters and not worrying, is Taijuan Walker coming up lefty or righty or double switch and all that stuff? I mean, you're not going to have to worry about all these double switches. Guys can stay in the game. Makes the manager's job a little easier.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an exciting spring and an exciting summer, Chris. So, listen, thanks for popping on with us. We'll talk to you in another week or two. And great job.
Yep, and thanks. Again, Mike, I want to congratulate you. I've been around. I'd say the one last thing I'd like to say is Mike always surrounds himself with good people, assistant coaches. He uses them really well. He finds what people's strengths are and brings it out in them, and I think that's another thing. And then, Mike will be given 7 players and, he goes to the softball team and goes and finds somebody. He goes to the girls soccer team and he finds somebody. There's no, I can't do this. So I think there's always that I have a use for you in some way. And I think people buy into that. So congrats, Mike.
Chris, thanks so much. And I was blessed to have Chris did a little scouting for us as well this season and valuable. One of these days we're going to get him back on staff or get him his own team. But I'm proud to have you as a friend, Chris, and thanks so much, pal.
All right, keep up the good work, guys.
Right.
Thanks for the great photo, Chris. Talk to you soon.
I'm going to get him on that one, Trez, I'll tell you.
All right, Mike. We had somebody who wanted to pop on the phone with us real quick. This is almost like a...
I was going to say, this is your life, huh?
Go ahead, caller. Caller, are you with us?
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, I think I know who this is. Do you, Mike?
Not yet.
Coach, it's Declan. I just wanted to say
Hey!
congratulations on the degree.
Thanks, Declan. Thanks so much, buddy. I really appreciate that. It's it's great to hear from you as well, and look forward to talking some more sports with you as we go along. But much appreciated, pal.
Yeah, absolutely. As always, thank you guys for having me. But Coach Mike, I mean, you are a Long Island legend now, a New York legend. Potentially, in my opinion, the next Coach K of women's basketball. So,
well, that's very kind of you. Thank you so much.
That's awesome. So, Declan, what are you hearing about this thing that Mike mentioned at the beginning of the show about the mandate being changed or lifted? What are you hearing?
Yeah, so as of this morning, the reports that were coming out were that New York City Mayor Eric Adams is lifting the mandate. They're going to make it's for the private sector. The adjustment is for athletes and entertainers will be able to be exceptions to the rule. That means, of course, Kyrie Irving for the Brooklyn Nets. That was unknown this morning. As of early as 10 a.m., they were unsure if it was going to be the Nets. As the evening progressed around 3 o'clock, it became official that it was going to include the Nets because they weren't sure the indoor-outdoor thing. But so the Yankees and the Mets are the other piece of news. All the unvaccinated players on both teams can play. So a great day for New York sports.
So one quick one, Declan, about I don't know if you're taking any math this semester, but 5 Yankee infielders does not go into 4. So what are we doing with the 5 Yankee infielders that we now have for 4 starting spots? Are we moving Gleyber Torres?
Well, unfortunately, I think you have to give Gleyber the bounce back opportunity, especially because he really did have a great 2019 where, if you remember, he had 38 home runs and drove in over 100 ribbies. So I don't want to say he's earned it because his lack of pop last year was questionable, but he's earned the chance to at least have another full season at second base, not shortstop. That experiment is long over with, to potentially prove himself. And DJ is going to be the most expensive utility man in baseball, which it doesn't sit right to me. And then I realized that, Trez, we're fans of the New York Yankees. Aaron Hicks could be on the IL by game 3 for all we know. I'm sure it's likely. Injuries are going to happen. It's great to have depth.
All right, buddy. Listen, we got to get to Johnny. I'm sorry to give you a little bit of the short shrift. We appreciate you popping on with us. We'll talk to you in a couple weeks, all right?
Thanks for having me. As always, welcome back. It wasn't the same without you guys. Take care.
Thanks, Declan.
Thanks, Deck. All right, Mike, we've got somebody else who wants to pop on the Zoom with us. I think he's backstage, so let's pop him on. Oh, there he is.
What's going on, Mike? Congratulations. That is a wonderful accomplishment. But before that, I want to add something else. You guys were terrific calling the Catholic League playoffs.
Oh, thank you very much. I go way back. That's how I met Mike. And boy, that was a lot of fun. I'll tell you. Thank you. And it kind of gave me some good ideas watching that as well during my playoff run. But thanks, much appreciated.
Yeah, and teaching at St. John the Baptist, so I always appreciate those games are always so much fun. So those games are always so much fun to watch. But you did that was impressive though. But one thing I wanted to add too is I heard you talking with Chris. So it feels like my basketball track is a little different from you guys. So Quayle Gymnasium is a place that's very familiar to me. I spent 2 years as the PA announcer for Malloy. during the second era of Joe Pellicane, the start of
Okay.
his return, and part of Charlie Marquardt, some great people. One thing I will say about Malloy, looking at that picture, I love the environment there. I love the environment at that gym. Those students care deeply about their basketball. And I tell anybody this, if you get a privilege to play there, you consider yourself lucky. And it seems you guys had a blast back in those days.
It was great. You know, I played for a season at Malloy when I was a student back, you know, in the late 80s, early 90s. And it was great then. And now it's just unbelievable. And when I was there as a coach, like you said, even at that time, when I was there coaching 98 through 2002, there weren't any dorms. Now you have dorms there. I mean, it's even better. Yeah, it's a great place.
Johnny, let me ask you real quick while we have you. Rangers with a couple big acquisitions in the last couple days. What can you tell us about those guys they brought in? What are they going to do for the Rangers down this stretch run?
It shows you when you give up a first-round pick in a playoff stretch, you're going for it. So that's what the Rangers are clearly doing. They were willing to part with what is probably going to be a mid to late first-round pick now for making the playoffs. They are going for it. No excuses now. The Rangers are expected to win around in the playoffs.
What did you think, Johnny, about the I know we're a little all over the map tonight, but what did you think about the Jets' attempt to try to get Tyreek Hill there?
They did what they felt was best for them. I was not willing. I mean, if it was going to take, it clearly showed that the Dolphins were acceptable with the offer, but he wanted to go to Miami. If Joe Douglas was able to find a way not to include a first-round pick, kudos to him. But if in the end of the game it was ultimately Tyreek's decision, it is what it is. But I still think before this is all said and done, they will get a big receiver. Keep an eye on DK Metcalf.
Okay.
I could certainly see him moving. I mean, Seattle's technically rebuilding. They already cut Bobby Wagner. I don't see why they would do it before his big payday.
And I also want to mention, John, your big gig you have coming up. We're going to hopefully get somebody on from the charity hockey game on our next episode that you'll be working over in New Jersey. Your first big gig at a big arena. So talk to us about that.
So usually I am seen at various colleges in the area doing PA announcing, a lot of basketball. These days, mostly at Five Towns College. I did some fill-in work at Queens College this year. Used to be the voice at NYIT before that program shut down. Did Malloy, as I mentioned. I've done at least a game probably at every school in the area with the exception of Dowling College when they were a thing as well, too. So I'm looking forward to PA announcing the first annual Huntington's Disease Hockey Classic, which is going to be at the RWJ Barnabas Hockey House in Newark, which is on the same property as Prudential Center, right next door. That's where the Devils practice. So great charity game, great cause, and I'm looking forward to doing that. And what my brother is telling me, probably at least 800, at a max of 800 people. So that'll probably be my biggest crowd.
That's nice, man. I'm sure you're going to do a great job, Johnny. Listen, thank you for hopping on with us. We appreciate it. It's great to see you. We're probably going to see you in a couple of weeks, okay?
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, John. All the best, buddy.
All right, Mike.
That's a big gig for him. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it is. So, I forgot to mention to Chris, he's got something big cooking there. I mean, obviously, you had huge things cooking. Chris is starting a sports podcasting program for his students. So I think they're going to learn a lot from Mr. Caputo. Johnny's got exciting news. So, yeah, it's really making us feel good, Mike, when the guys that regularly appear on our show are starting to take things to the next level,
Without a doubt. And, when Chris was in college up at Stonehill, he did a radio show pretty consistently. And he actually had me on around this time to talk college basketball. So I don't even want to say how many years ago that was, but he's more than qualified. And especially, he worked at the Fan a little bit. So those kids are going to get a great education from Mr. Caputo.
Yeah, it's funny. Tonight we kind of gave the Islanders short shrift, but we sort of pronounced them dead on our last show. Same with the Knicks. We did touch base with the Jets, the Rangers, and also What else do we got to get to? Oh, Mets and Yankees, we touched base, but I did want to bring up just a couple with the Nets, Mike, because I think it is interesting when you look at about 10 games left in the season. They're sitting at that 8th place spot, which means a play-in game. Now, if that play-in game is in Toronto, which looks like it probably is going to be, then Kyrie is not going to play. With this new news that you just added to the table, that if it's here in New York, he will be able to play. Are the Nets going to be able to and want to put the pedal to the metal?
That's a great point, and I would think so. I mean, because now when you have this really a gift of having him back in the lineup, you can't lay anything to chance right now, and you have to do everything you can to host these games and not put him in a situation. Amazing, though, when we're talking about here at the end of March with Kyrie and Kevin Durant, and since we've been on, since we've been on last, James Harden is no more. Ben Simmons is somewhat there. Does his back all of a sudden get better, or I don't know what the deal is with him, or are we talking about next season for him?
No, I don't think so. Nash keeps insisting that that somehow he's going to be of some use in the playoffs. But I'll tell you, Mike, I really can't see that. Herniated disc is a bit of a rough injury, no?
It is. And, did it happen while he was working out, getting ready? Or I would think so, right? I mean, because they wouldn't have, I don't think the trade would have gone through had they found this before. This guy just seems to bring drama with him no matter where he goes and no matter how many, starts and stops he gets. Listen, I'm again, we joke a lot about the Nets and that, I'm more of a Knicks fan, but I'd love to see them do well. I don't have any beef with Ben Simmons. I think he's a young kid who got in a tough situation, and I really like to see him thrive in Brooklyn as well. It would be good for him and good for the fan base. And when we can finally stop worrying about who can play due to COVID and who can and shots and all that stuff, that's when we'll really be in business. But we're getting close. It certainly seems like we're getting close.
But the one thing that's undeniable since Durant has come off of the injured list, boy, Mike, he has been an absolute load, I'll tell you.
It's amazing to have a guy who misses so much time and come back and look like he never missed a beat. I mean, he is truly a gifted athlete and just a tremendous basketball player. And you know what? You can say different things about his attitude over the years, getting in Twitter wars with people, whatever else. But the dude's a warrior. I mean, he comes and plays, and he pretty much keeps his nose clean. We could talk about Julius Randle on the other side of the river for a while, but we're not going to do that in terms of not keeping your nose clean in games. Kevin Durant just comes and does his thing, and hopefully this mix now is what he needs and wants.
Yeah, and I mean, to me right now, the closest thing in the NBA to unstoppable right now. So it's going to be really interesting over the next couple of weeks to see what happens with them. But before we wrap, Mike, I want to congratulate you one more time on the streak. It's an amazing accomplishment. I'm really in awe of not just what you did, but we want to definitely acknowledge those girls on your team. Fantastic job.
Well, thank you so much. It was great to have you, in the stands and watching a couple of games. And as you saw, the support from the community was amazing. And the players, the 14 of them, we just found out next Wednesday, they're going to be honored by Nassau County at the county exec's office. They are as good a group of people as they are basketball players. Their parents are to be commended. They really are a family, and it made it just a joy for me. I miss them tremendously. Just being around them, the games and the playing was wonderful, but just a great group, and I'm blessed. And, to everybody that came on, and Mike and Chris and Declan and John, again, thank you so much.
Thanks again, folks. No time for credits tonight. Thank you to Michael Anthony. Thanks to the guys for hopping on with us. For Mike Guidone, this is Mike Trezor. We'll see you next time on Spot on Sports.
Whatever it takes.